Welcome to NFL Daily, where we're always limited in practice. And in reality, we're old. I am Gregg Rosenthal here in the Chris Wesseling podcast studio, beyond lucky today to be joined by my friends Patrick Claybon and Steve Wyche. It's preview week 3 time.
Here we go. And I'm day-to-day. That's the new injury vernacular in the NFL.
Yes, and of course, we are presented by DoorDash. Excited about that. And yeah, we got some surprising injury news about Jordan Love. We'll get to the Packers game later. We will also get to our survivor picks. So, tough story, tough times for us here with the survivor picks.
It felt so great after week 1.
Patrick went out week 1. I went out week 2. Steve wasn't here week 1. And so, as the host of NFL Daily, I'm saying we're going to continue this survivor thing.
I mean, you let me cheat.
missed week 1, and I'm letting Patrick and us back in, or else, people don't. So hopefully you weren't listening. So whenever you have your pick of the week, just let us know.
I'll let you know. That's a loophole. Nice one. Thank you, guys.
All right. So every week we start with the game that has the smallest point spread, and then we work our way up to the biggest point spread. Doesn't mean it's going to be a blowout. We saw a lot of underdogs win outright last week, a lot of big upsets, but I am kind of happy from an old school traditional TV, way that we're starting with Ravens and Cowboys.
Yeah, the Baltimore Ravens favored by 1 point, Greg, over the Dallas Cowboys. These teams have a similar issue, glaring offensive deficiencies in one particular portion. The Ravens still dealing with the departure of 3 linemen. The replacements have been kind of slow in getting a start and making things productive there. For Dallas, it's seemingly making the run game an afterthought, both schematically and personnel-wise. And they both rely on their highly paid quarterbacks to compensate for that, but Dak couldn't compensate, Steve, for the defense, which got run out of the stadium for the second straight game there. The Packers did it last year in the playoffs on Sunday.
Well, that's why this is the Derrick Henry game, right? This is the back that everybody in Dallas wanted for the Cowboys. And so this is the back that the Ravens have not figured out how to use yet. Oh, and what a Dallas. So we're looking at a video of Rashid Shaheed and all these great pass plays. They only threw the ball 19 times. The Saints ran all over the Cowboys.
Right.
And I think this is going to be an opportunity because of that soft interior, as they say, up the spine, D tackles, middle linebacker, and safeties in the run game for the Cowboys for Derrick Henry to get that run game going, even though both of those guards, as Patrick said for the Ravens, have been shaky.
Yeah, you know what? They did get the running game going late against the Raiders. They ran the ball pretty well in the second half before the 3 and outs at the end of the game. But before that, Henry was finally kind of looking like Henry. And you said it, this Mike Zimmer defense, they could not set the edge last week at all. We were talking about DeMarvion, Overshown, Marshawn Nealon, these young guys for the Cowboys, and Overshown was barely even playing last week. They were in base defense. They had 3 linebackers on the field, and they still got run over. You sign a couple guys, Jordan Phillips and Linval Joseph, late in camp, and you're starting them week 1. That is never a good sign. And now Phillips is actually going to IR. So I just don't know if they're that talented defensively, which is crazy to say when you have Trevon Diggs. And I like Jordan Lewis, and of course you like DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons up front, but it's more just can a good offense pick out their weak points? I think they have some at linebacker, at defensive tackle, and maybe in the secondary they are missing Deron Bland too.
It was just so difficult for the Ravens to really do something in the opener against the Chiefs that wasn't directly Lamar related. And even in the Raiders game, where the passing yards they did get, Lamar's having to shift away from Max Crosby. He's having to make Christian Wilkins miss in the pocket and then come up and do the pump fake thing and get the ball to Zay down the field. It's just hard to let go of those images and thinking about Micah Parsons being the chase guy. It's very tough for me.
I agree. I mean, I think Micah Parsons, Zimmer's gonna turn him loose. But this is the game I think we're gonna see Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely get in there. You talk about some of the linebacker issues they have. You soften them up with an intermediate passing game, and boom, Derrick Henry can get going. And like you said, Greg, he was hitting some nice runs. He was doing that against Kansas City as well. And then Todd Monken flashed back to the playoff game and said, we don't need to run the ball with our running backs anymore. Let's make Lamar try and do everything.
So flipping to the other side, when Dallas has the ball, and I like the Ravens in this game.
I do too.
It's partly because they're 0-2, but it's partly just because I think they're a better football team. I might have jumped off my take that the Cowboys were going to be a mess 1 week too early. I got it right, and then I jumped off, and now I'm wrong. I'm not really being serious about that, but I do think the Ravens are a more talented team. And that game last week that the Ravens lost, it was one of those where, if at Football Outsider, FTN now, they run the simulations, and like if you look at the game, the Ravens should have won that game like 92% of the time. It was a little fluky how they lost it. And then you look at this Dallas offense, which hasn't really been right for 2 straight weeks. Where are the strengths for this Cowboys team? Sure, Dak is there, but the offensive line communication, I think, has been an issue. There's been a little bit of talk of like Dak's making all the calls at the line of scrimmage, but you have a rookie center and communicating to the offensive line and them all being on the same page. And it's not just the rookie left tackle with Tyler Guyton. Their right tackle, Terrence Steele, had a really bad game last week. And the Ravens can maybe get after the passer a little bit. They can cook things up. And I still think the lack of depth behind CeeDee Lamb is an issue. And I have more faith that kind of in the Ravens infrastructure.
If the Cowboys are looking for good news, this stat was wild that I saw this week. The Baltimore Ravens have had the opposing quarterback play action pass drop back 13 times.
Mm-hmm.
They are 13 for 13 on those dropbacks. A rough start. Both teams. Somebody's got to get something figured out. But Greg, you mentioned offensive line issues. That brings us to our second game, the Chicago Bears. At the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts favored by 1.5 points. The Bears worked their way through the AFC South this early season, their third AFC South opponent. On the road again this time. The Colts were able to score thanks to a couple spectacular plays by Anthony Richardson and Alec Pierce and company in week 1. But the run defense has been an issue. Can the Bears even run the ball, Greg, to make it an issue in this game?
I mean, they couldn't last week. That their offense has been such a mess, and you would think this is a great week to get off the schneid against a Colts defense, which has had its share of struggles, but I don't know. Like, DeForest Buckner is out of this game.
Yes.
He is on injured reserve, and the front four for the Colts just haven't been good enough in any respect. This is what they were building their defense around, and yet, like, when a bad offensive line goes up against a bad defense, I still tend to trust the bad defense more. And like, they are the number one. Like, as much as the run defense has gotten some attention, the Colts aren't a great pass defense either.
Yeah, look, the Colts have some players. I mean, still, you've got Kwity Paye. You've got some guys on that defense, Zaire Franklin, Speed, some guys who can make some plays. But this is one, I mean, soon is Shane Waldron and this coaching staff are going to start feeling some heat, for the Bears. We already know they're all on 1-year potential Green Mile deals. So they're going to have to figure something out.
Wait, what's a Green Mile?
Green Mile. Okay. So did you ever see the movie Green Mile? You know what that means?
No. I do know what it means, but I haven't seen the movie.
You're on your way to the death chamber.
Oh, okay.
Right? You're on the Green Mile. That's where you're walking.
The floor is green.
The floor is green. That is the path. So if they don't get it done, that's exactly where they're headed. But, when I look at the Bears and Caleb, just so many things, they're overcomplicating. I think they can run the ball. I mean, I think they need to get Rashawn Johnson involved a little bit more and Khalil Herbert a little bit more. I think there's certain things that those guys do that they could take advantage of against the defensive front that is not great against the run. I do some quick passing game stuff to get Caleb's confidence going.
The point I wanted to make about the pass defense with the Colts, because you're right, the rushing numbers are so bad.
Yeah.
But on NFL Pro, like the next gen sets, they look at efficiency, and this is actually the second worst passing attack in the league, the Bears. That's not a surprise. The fact that the Panthers exist is the only reason they're at, because their numbers are so bad. But the Colts actually, efficiency-wise, are the second worst pass defense. So they're not
crazy.
They're not doing anything well.
And that's considering the fact that we're 2 games into the season.
Right.
And Joe Mixon ran for 153 yards for them in the very first week of the season. It's one of those very, very movable objects against a very, very resistible force type matchup, because the Bears' offensive line has given up pressures on 47% of their dropbacks.
Not okay.
And to see Caleb Williams on the ground writhing in pain, first of all, he was exhausted towards the end of the game, but just getting teed off time after time again by Will Anderson Jr., as well as the rest of that Texans pass. It's just hard to get past that for me. And I know that like they want to get the downfield passing thing, but Steve mentioned the danger that this coaching staff might be in, and you juxtapose that with across the street here, where the Chargers staff comes in and they aren't running the ball well at all in the first half, but they stick
with it.
They're committed to it. I don't know if the Bears feel like it's safe to go out there and try to grind it out against a team that can't stop the run.
And this is the example that we're seeing so many with the young quarterback. We drafted a guy high. We have to let everybody know that he's going to be the savior. Protect him. Run the football. They have shown that they can do some things in the run game if they stick with it. Okay, they're not playing this Texans defensive front. You've heard me on here. The Texans are too deep at all their front seven positions. They're not playing that type of front this game. Stick with the ball. If it is a 10-7 game, because it very well could, because the Colts can't score. You know, that's
that though. Like they should be able to score
against the Bears.
I do. Okay,
that Bears defense is legit.
Look, Bears very good on the back end, and so that's troublesome for an Anthony Richardson-led passing attack, which has been erratic. Michael Pittman said it. They're not getting the simple plays. They're not getting the chain-moving plays. They're getting a couple big plays. Anthony Richardson, I've sold him as a guy who makes really good decisions with the football, that it's an underrated trait of his. Interception last week, one of them was a bad decision. I don't think he's always been making the best decisions on when to keep the ball and when to give it on the RPO stuff. So that's something that was a little off in Green Bay. I think they got to build the whole ship out of the run game. I mean, they need to win in the worst way. They're at home against a vulnerable Bears team. They're 0-2. You cannot go to 0-3 at home against the Bears. I'm leaning into Anthony Richardson running, and of course I'm leaning into Jonathan Taylor running. That's the one thing they have done well. Their offensive line has looked good, I think, through 2 weeks, and they can run the ball. They're one of the best running teams in the league. This Bears Eberflus defense is built to stop the pass, really. So I think you can win a game because I think Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor should still be one of the very best backfields in the league. And to me, that's actually the number one thing in this entire game that I trust the most. Give me the Bears. Yeah. I mean, give me the Colts.
The high variance aspect, right? But you at least believe in one of those variances in Anthony Richardson being able to make plays, even though this Bears defense is very, very good. It's like it could go either. If he's going to be effectively wild, he's doing it against the Bears, but he's also doing it against everybody else.
Bears are going to cover. Caleb's going to go ahead and have a pretty nice game.
I like little disagreement.
We're going head to head there. We'll go from there to a matchup of unbeatens: the Los Angeles Chargers and the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh for their Week 3 home opener.
3 yards in a cloud of dust.
Oddly enough, it's going to be a grind out with Justin Fields back at the helm, favored by 1.5 points. Here comes the Chargers, though. They do have some injury concerns for Justin Herbert dealing with a foot, but they're bringing in one of the most efficient passing and rushing efficiency defenses in the entire league. They're number 1, Steve, in both of those categories. Do they get it done?
Yes. Ooh, I'm torn on this one. That's why I like the 1.5 here. I think this is a tight game because neither one of these offenses, well, the Chargers can score, but Pittsburgh, find that end zone is a very difficult thing for them. Man, that defense. I like. This is where I think Fields, being an RPO type of guy, can put some stress on those ends because this is where uber talented outside linebackers / defensive ends, they like to use their talent, and this is going to be a disciplined game, right? Are you gonna stick with the quarterback? Are you gonna take the pitch man? Are you gonna take the RPO fake?
In terms of Bosa and Mack,
in terms of back and Tuipulotu, this is. I think, I'm torn on this because, again, Pittsburgh can't score, but this is where I think Justin Fields and Arthur Smith are going to be able to dial up a couple things to get some yards in that RPO game.
We're so early in the season. This is a show me something game because what do we really know about the Chargers? They've improved. Their base level is obviously better on the lines, and I think the defense is playing in sync. But they've played the Raiders and they've played the Panthers. The Steelers last week are coming off a game against Bo Nix, and Kirk wasn't moving around week 1. These defenses are going to be excellent, but they've had good matchups the first couple of weeks. I have a question: how good is this Chargers offensive line that their fans are telling me is going to be great, and people are really impressed with Joe Alt? There's some disagreements. If you look at sort of the metrics, pass rush win rate and PFF are way off. PFF has them as a good offensive line. Pass rush win rate, run block win rate isn't too kind of the Chargers right now. I don't put that much into it, but this is the ultimate test because I think this is the number 1 front in the entire league, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Cam Hayward, he's done it again. He was injured last year and he's back to just being ageless Cam Hayward. Keanu Benton had a great game last. Highsmith is good. They're just so deep. It is going to be a huge test. And we tape this show on Wednesdays. Justin Herbert missed practice entirely on Wednesday, so that's just something to watch because if it's Easton Stick, I've seen enough of that movie.
Yeah.
They're not winning with Easton Stick,
Whoa.
but we'll just have to watch and see. Herbert did finish out the game, which is usually a pretty good sign that you're going to play the next week.
Yeah, but anytime we're invoking Easton Stick and not in a sports equipment type
You cannot
of
help yourself.
Yeah, I can't. No, it's every time it comes up. Yeah, that would change things entirely. But the numbers for Joe Alt do look good. He's allowed 4 pressures on 51 blocking snaps. Some of that's against Jadeveon Clowney coming back, and then there was the opener, and we did
Max Crosby.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
That kind of jumps off. But T.J. Watt and the Steelers
Oh my
defense
God.
is just such a different beast. I think it comes into we've seen the Steelers where if you're watching the game and you're not necessarily paying attention to how things are going, you see them take downfield shot after downfield shot with Justin Fields. They're drawing penalties in terms of George Pickens. There's been a couple of touchdowns that have been called back. It's kind of where we looked at the Pittsburgh Steelers last year, and it's like, well, they just need to rely on this big play to George Pickens. It's the same way, but the defense is healthier now, and the quarterback can make more plays.
There's some real chemistry there.
Which makes me feel
Yeah, there is. Between those two, there is.
Yeah.
And and if they get the play action going, if they can get any type of run game going, this can be fun. Sounds like, guys, we're leaning to the home team here.
I am a little bit, partly because of the Herbert injury. These are the top 2 defenses in terms of EPA, and the Steelers are shorthanded. Like, they're counting on it's a lot of like Darnell Washington and Van Jefferson and Michael Pruitt and Calvin Austin. It's like, it's not great. And the book on Justin Fields has always been blitz him, blitz him, blitz him. He'll struggle. That's what's been the approach the first 2 weeks the defenses have taken. Hasn't worked at all. He's actually been very effective, maybe showing some maturation. But this Steelers offensive line stinks too right now. They're benching Broderick Jones, their first-round pick. They have not played in sync. You mentioned the running game. We thought this team would be like a good running team. They've been really poor so far, actually, per play. So that's very different. Maybe I'm switching my pick as I'm talking because only one of these teams has a one-time guest of NFL Daily. J.K. Dobbins has gotten that bump, and he is a man of his word since he was on the show with us in training camp. I'll let you go on this. Like, you throwing any numbers out there? You got any goals in mind?
I'll let you put your numbers out. I'll let
Okay.
everyone put their numbers out,
Okay.
and I bet I'll beat those numbers that y'all put out.
Okay. I'm thinking like 1,200, 1,300 yards from scrimmage, something like that. Because they want to share the ball a little bit. Gus is going to get his work too.
Yep.
But you're looking, you can still beat that, you're saying.
Yes.
Okay. I love it. The look on his face is awesome there. And I listened to him. I know J.K. Dobbins is a man of his word. I know this is a very talented man in terms of vision and patience, and just he's got it. And so I told my daughter, you better get J.K. Dobbins on your fantasy team. She did. And,
He's killing.
1,300 yards from
He's
scrimmage. That's
killing.
nothing right now. He's going to pass that easy.
Yeah, easy money. His yards per carry went way down in week 2, and he had 7.7 yards per carry against the Carolina Panthers. We'll leave that matchup of unbeatens to go to another matchup of unbeatens. The Houston Texans, who got that win on Sunday Night Football, favored by 2 points on the road in the Hive. Where Sam Darnold.
I love this game.
Yes.
I absolutely love this game. The
Darnold Hive. Buzzing.
Really, look, you have 2 offenses that run the same scheme, right? Bobby Slowick, Kevin O'Connell. These are all McVay Shanahan disciples, right? So they're going to be running the same scheme. And we saw what that Vikings defense did to the 49ers in this game, where you had Brock Purdy coming up to Brian Flores saying, wow, that scheme.
That scheme's crazy, bro. It's crazy, bro.
But the Texans are a different monster now. Well, I don't know how. I mean, they're so loaded. This is such a good game. So, in me talking about Houston's offense going against this defense, I do think still that Houston has got some advantages with the receivers. The fact that they spread the ball around the way they do. We know Nico Collins is really showing up big time.
Leading the league in receiving by like 50 yards.
But not having Joe Mixon is a different thing in this game. We saw Cam Akers had a couple good runs, but he coughed up the ball. I mean, that's been a problem of his. So C.J. Stroud's going to have to really show up in this game. I think he shows up every game, but I think this is one where it's going to be on his arm.
Yes. And I've felt that the Texans passing game has actually been a little disjointed the first 2 weeks. They've been productive. C.J. Stroud has made a lot of good throws and a couple good throws in rhythm, but he's really counted on in both games, just making plays.
Yes.
As if he's probably been working on that. Like, not that he wasn't good at that his rookie year, but these 2 games, it's really stood out. But the on-time winning from the pocket throws haven't been as consistent. Now they've had pretty tough matchup this last week against the Bears, and this is a tough one too. But you met it. I mean, Purdy's not wrong. That scheme is crazy, bro. Like, they're like you said, these offenses are similar. The defenses are not, because there's no defense quite like a Brian Flores defense. And just they have like 4 players. I was watching this on film this week that are just everywhere. That seems like there's 2 of them. And here's the 4. Metellus is everywhere.
Yes, he's everywhere.
Harrison Smith is everywhere. Still playing like he's 25 years old. Van Ginkel is everywhere.
Yeah.
And then the guy I wanted to talk about is Blake Cashman. It's the Cashman revenge game. Blake Cashman was awesome in that game last week in coverage. Brian Flores said he got it like a tip from I forget, it was like a former Hurricanes coach of Cashman's in college that happens to live in Eden Prairie now or something like that. And that's been a great free agent signing. And then they have a lot of really smart guys who can execute a tough defense.
And that's the thing, because when you mention all those guys, they've all seen a lot of football, and the communication with them works so well. Where there's plays where they line up showing double A gap, they got like double mug look, and they come out to cover 2.
Right.
It's like Brock's having to figure that out. And at one point, cornerback's traveling with Brandon Ayuk in motion, and instead of running, he runs around the rest of the secondary, and he goes back into a single high look. And Brock Purdy looks up like, what am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah, that's a hell of an ask of a player, too.
And he just has to take a sack. It's just, there's so much, and a lot can go wrong, and C.J. Stroud can make you wrong, but it's going to be fun to watch. But I do think, since he comes into the league as a rookie, he is top 4 in yards per attempt against the blitz. And that includes his entire rookie season where he's still figuring it out. He's still good.
And B-Flow sends him.
But even like that week 1, they didn't, like, you just never know what you're going to get. This team, I think, could execute anything. I'm torn on this game. Like, I lean Texans. I don't have a strong feeling. You're right, though, Steve. This is an awesome one. As much as we talk about the Vikings scheme and everything, is like, the Texans still have the players, Stingley and Lassiter and Petrie in the back end. That's a tougher matchup than Sam Darnold had.
And here's the bigger point. And no one talks about them. The Texans linebackers, this might be, other than maybe the Niners, and maybe the best overall group with Azeez Al-Shaair.
Okay.
The puncher. You got Henry To'o. They have dudes who can run and get to the ball and deliver, some turnover changing contact when they get there. And that's going to be a problem for the Vikings. In that run game, that intermediate stuff, the way that these linebackers can run and get to the ball are going to be an issue for the Vikings. I do like the Texans to cover.
So this was an interesting game coming into the season, but you just never know what's going to look like.
Right.
To me, maybe the game of the week. I have a little hot take here.
Okay.
That the secondary crews, and so for CBS, that's Charles Davis and Ian Eagle. And now for Fox, that's Greg Olsen and Joe Davis. Like, they've been getting the better games every week. They got Charles Davis is on Texans Vikings. That's intriguing. That's a 2024 type of game. Greg Olsen's got Saints Eagles. That's a lot of fun. And then they stick, the big names. It's like, oh, the Cowboys are just, Tom Brady's personal team for the 3rd straight week. That's a good game too. But I'm just saying, sometimes I've been noticing the secondary teams are getting the juicier games. I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to the rest of this show too. But we are going to take a quick break, and we'll be back right after this. Back on NFL Daily for what I think is the game of the week in the Superdome right here in week 3. We're already doing games of the week in the Superdome.
How about that?
And we were a field goal or a caught ball on a crucial 3rd down away from this being a matchup of unbeatens in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Saints. Instead, the 1-on-1 Eagles on the road in what will be a bananas atmosphere in the Superdome on Sunday. 2.5-point favorite, the New Orleans Saints. Bringing in the top offensive football, Steve, that went deep into the second half before they even had a drive that didn't result in a touchdown in Dallas. How do you see this one going?
I'm not a gambler, but 2.5 seems like a small number because the Eagles' defense is not good. I mean, the issues that they had last year, then their losing streak, have surfaced big time. Their defensive line fades as the game goes along in terms of stopping the run. The linebackers get outmatched, and their corners, at least one of them, the veteran, the speed is an issue. Well, okay, Rashid Shaheed, all he does is catch big play touchdowns, right? You've got Chris Olave, Derek Carr's hitting these guys. Running game, Alvin Kamara looks fantastic. Like I said, for that big number that the Saints just put up on the Cowboys, they only threw the ball 19 times, guys.
Right.
They can run the football. They've got guys who can mash. We can say all we want about the Eagles' offense, keeping them close. Their defense, Vic Fangio or whatnot, it's not there right now. That 2.5 number seems very, very small to me. So you could think, the Saints fans are going to be here and stand up and get crunk a whole lot in the dome this week.
Right. It's just evaluating, do you put stock into the players' names and what you thought going into the season, or do you put stock into what your eyes are telling you? Now, the Saints have not played a normal game yet. They've gotten to 30 by halftime in each game because they've just put up touchdown. I mean, it's just crazy. At some point, they will play a normal game, and I think that'll be a good test of their offensive line. Can they do some true drop back passing, not just blowing people open in the running game? I don't know if they're going to have to, though, in this game, to your point, Steve, because the run defense for Philadelphia has been so bad, especially against the outside zone. That's what the Saints have been majoring in. I can't believe how in sync the group is. You give a ton of credit to their offensive line coach and Clint Kubiak, their coordinator, because Cesar Ruiz and Eric McCoy, especially on the interior, just blowing people up. Like Trevor Penning is making it happen. And this is going up against the exact biggest weakness right now of this Eagles group. And Derek Carr has shown in this system, he'll pass early to set up the run. That's where I think people always get it missed, is like you pass early, you get a lead to set up their run. And that's worked perfectly. And right now, like Bryce Huff isn't getting it done, but no one else, like Jalen Carter's not either. No. Jalen Carter did not have a good game against Chris Lindstrom on Monday night either. It's a short week. You're on the road. Like they wish they had that win just in their pocket, because like even though they weren't playing well, sometimes you can work your way into it. But now they're looking at a 1-2 record potentially. It's amazing how quickly things change, though. I saw on Twitter some Eagles fans just saying like, "Oh, this is a schedule loss. Just here's 1-2." I'm like, man, like that's crazy.
Well, the big and rapid change to me was it was not that long ago where we're thinking about this Eagles stable of edge rushers and pass rushers that's rotating in. They're leading the league in time off the snap to target times for everybody. Mm-hmm. And then they don't necessarily want to go up on that $1 million for Hassan Reddick. The Jets don't want to either.
Whoops.
And then Bryce Huff comes in, and you're kind of starting to wonder if Howie gets back on the phone to try to figure something out.
It's not that crazy if everyone could just swallow their pride a little bit.
Yeah, because it makes sense for all parties. Because, I mean, not to get into the contract weeds, but Hassan Reddick deserves more than $1 million and change here in 2024. And there's plenty of teams that could use an edge that can operate.
The Jets, now that Jermaine Johnson's out.
Yes, they absolutely could.
But now they've got a number 2 passing efficiency offense coming in, where they're number 26 in passing efficiency. And it's not like it was last year, where it's the comedy of errors on the back end. Right. It's like Quinyon Mitchell's playing great.
Yes, he is.
And other than getting completely diced up by Drake London on the final play, Slay played all right.
Sure. Well. There was a play, I think it was the last one, and I was listening to an evaluation of it on PHLY, this podcast, the Eagles podcast, and they noted, like, on that play, they're doing a stunt on one side, and then they do it 3-by-1 to set up their best pass rusher to have a one-on-one situation. At the Eagles, that is. And their best pass rusher, they believe, with the absolute game on the line, is 37-year-old Brandon Graham, who has played okay through 2 weeks, but that's not a good sign for what's going on with the rest of your guys.
It's just, I mean, and this is a bad matchup. I mean, again, you look at the stretch zone scheme. And what's interesting, you talked about how even someone like Trevor Penning, right, who we didn't know could play, this scheme has really let guys like that resurrect their careers. It comes from an Alex Gibbs run scheme from back in the day with Mike Shanahan. He never wanted first-round draft picks. He wanted guys who are agile with athleticism, who move to a spot, not to a man. That's what they're doing when you talked about that offensive line playing on a thread, and just having someone like Alvin Kamara, who this is his type of game where he can be patient and hit some spots. I just think this is tough. I mean, Philly, yeah, they might be able to put up some points, but we all know that the Saints' bread has been buttered with this defense.
Okay,
for 5 or 6
to make the case quickly for Philly, it's a huge deal that AJ Brown is expected to miss another game, and they're such a drop off. They're thin, but the Saints defense, in at least the last few years, basically the same defense, has struggled with good rushing quarterbacks. That's Jalen Hurts. Hurts is playing at a high level, and more than anything, I can see this Eagles offensive line mashing this Saints defensive line in the running game because I think they can be that good. You can push back on me.
No
on
way
that,
they're mashing.
but I think they can move the ball on offense, running the ball, and that it's going to be more of a game than the Saints have had so far.
Well, speaking of quarterbacks that can run, Taysom Hill, DNP at practice Wednesday. So
He's a tight end, Patrick.
Well, either way.
He's a big factor, though, because they kind of dictate. They move him all around. Yeah.
Well, regardless, having him on the field is probably important for a couple plays. We go from that game to another good game, which maybe we wouldn't have thought was good a few weeks ago, and that is the Detroit Lions, a 3-point favorite on the road in the desert against Kyler and company, who were all over the Rams on Sunday. Chris Myers and Mark Schlereth on the call, Greg. Kyler and Marv Jr. got it figured out last week.
They absolutely did. He has been so awesome. I still feel bad that I nominated that Derek Carr throw to Shaheed as the throw of the week on our Sunday night recap. Let's watch the angle here in the studio. And obviously, if you're just listening in your car, just pull over and watch it because the figure eight that he made before he threw on the run and had to throw it kind of behind him and time it perfectly to the receiver, and then he turns around like Steph Curry. That really was the throw of the week last week. So I apologize to Kyler Murray. Do you think that throw would beat the Anthony Richardson throw from week 1 as the throw of the year so far?
The play itself might beat it.
It's called the throw of the year. Then,
but nobody's doing what Kyler does, but the throw itself.
The champion still has the belt then. What a fun test, though, this is against, I think, a good Lions defense. Hutchinson's playing well. Onwuzurike's playing well. Branch is playing well. I think the Lions defense has shown up in these 2 games.
Yeah, this is the one that's going to be a little bit more of a truth teller as to what the Arizona Cardinals are, because they are exciting. You know me, I'm the world's biggest Kyler Murray fan. Is he on the island yet? Have we gone back there to on the island?
I'm glad you mentioned that. We are debating whether to do QB Island next week or the week after. We have not gone back to the island.
Okay, so we got to get Kyler.
But I think he's going to be on there. It's safe to say.
But with Derek Carr, who we get fired, might be on there too. But I just think this is the week where Detroit, though, its offense gets right. I mean, they've kind of been junked up and truncated. They've had some tough games, but I think this is where their offense gets right. Again, I think Kyler's going to put some points up on him, but I think Jared Goff is going to not be throwing picks like he did last week and to get the Lions.
Question for you, Patrick.
Yeah.
Just a little theory I had.
Okay.
At least the last couple of weeks. Are teams catching up to the Lions just like a little bit on offense? The run has been pretty good. Not great. They kind of struggled at the end of last week. But more, I just haven't seen the wide open dudes, and Goff hasn't looked quite as comfortable. I'm just used to seeing those wide open guys. Maybe I'm overreacting.
Well, it's always tough to say, hey, you take away the turnovers because it's the NFL. You can't take away the turnovers. They doubled up the Bucs in terms of first downs rushing, almost did it in passing. They doubled up in total yards, and they doubled their passing yards as well.
Okay, but they are – I have an answer for that, though. They are 16th so far through 2 games in yards per pass, just a basic stat. They've been pretty average by their passing metrics. Yeah, you're going to dial up some yards when you go back there 55 times, but it hasn't been as easy, I don't think, for Jared.
No.
I think he's had a tougher time than I would have expected.
It certainly has not been as easy, and I think, of course, they're playing against 2 teams that they just beat in the playoffs.
Good point, yeah.
There's a lot of familiarity there, a lot of commonality in the game plan, and now they get to kind of go off of that into a different place. I'm confident in this game, and that's a loss where Dan Campbell was already saying at halftime, I screwed up.
Yeah, I blew that.
That's on me. I think they're going to come out, and we're not going to see Jared Goff dropping back 40 times. I think they're going to pound the rocks.
And that can be, and one thing, one of the reasons why this Lions offense is successful is they personnel scheme defenses into a brain maze ahead of time. They'll come out and run personnel, two running backs, 2 tight ends, and they're throwing it 30 yards downfield. Well, now teams aren't going for the okie doke, right? There's some situational things they're probably looking at that they're discovering. So Ben Johnson's got to kind of get back into the lab a little bit. But I'm with Patrick. I just think this is a game where their offense kind of finally gets it going.
Is the over under here is 51.5. That's not high enough. This is the one game where I'm feeling 33-25, something like that.
Yeah, up and down the field. The Cardinals haven't played a low-scoring game all season.
No, their offense is legit.
It's legit, man. I mean, the offensive line is playing, and Kyler he's feeling pretty good these days.
And so points easy to come by in that one. Perhaps not in our next game. That is the Green Bay Packers in what would be the Malik Willis revenge game against the Tennessee Titans, who are at home, favored by 2.5. But, Greg, we just saw video earlier today on Wednesday of Jordan Love on the field wearing pads and throwing a pass. I'm not going to extrapolate it because I'm not a Twitter doctor.
Yeah.
But he's doing that. So take from that.
He's limited in practice, and they took it all the way to the weekend where Matt LaFleur was leaving the door open. They had him questionable initially and then downgraded him to doubtful. It's one of those where the coach has been publicly saying something and the insiders said something quite different initially. Just reading between the lines, I still think he's unlikely for this week, and that next week might be the one. That just reading between like how these things sort of go.
Well, if Matt LaFleur plays it like he did last week where they run it 53 times,
right.
Jordan Love can hand it off 53 times. I'm with you. Against this defense, which gets after people. I mean, this defense, I think, is a little bit more surprising, and the way they've been able to get after the quarterback, I would not put him out there. This is a long-term play. This is a guy you just signed to a deal, Patrick, you were talking about.
They just won a game. They bought themselves a week.
They bought themselves a week. This is going to be a very tough game. To me, it's going to be on the Packers defense to keep forcing Will Levis to make mistakes. But I would not play Jordan Love in this game and let Malik Willis try to get revenge because it's a very different Tennessee team, too.
Okay, so Malik Willis last week, obviously, it was a lot of handoffs.
Yeah.
But when they asked him to make a throw, he was effective. And when he ran a few times, he was effective. And I just thought it was really an outstanding story, especially after his former teammate Taylor Lewan said on a podcast last week about Malik Willis that he likes him, good human being, but the guy doesn't really know ball, unfortunately. And then went through that when it comes to checks and cans, that he has a tough time seeing safety, seeing the field, which I thought was an unfair thing to say because he's in the locker room with this kid as a rookie coming out of college when, he's very raw. So I thought it was very telling how Matt LaFleur said how impressed he was, how quickly Malik Willis picked up this offense, that there was only one moment in the game that there was any sort of communication issue or that he could, there was an issue of like understanding what was going on there, and he expected there to be a lot of it, and that they installed the game plan and he executed it to a T. But Malik Willis was not taking the bait this week. Asked whether he wanted to prove the Titans wrong. He said, I could care less. I got paid the whole time I was there. I was more blessed. Yes. I was more than blessed for the opportunity they gave me. They brought me into the league, whether those guys are there or not. So very good.
Spoke like a true Liberty University.
Yeah, you don't survive at Liberty University without being able to respond well to issues that affect many different aspects of your life and existence. I think, like in terms of because with so much coming in, like he'd never thrown for 100 yards. Nobody had ever had 50 yards receiving in a game that Malik Willis started. Those are all out. And we now see what it looks like when a coaching staff is willing to put together a game plan, a thoughtful game plan that's not just, it's a backup quarterback. Okay, let's go in.
Let's just run our normal system when the two players are very different. This guy is not Ryan Tannehill. He's not Jordan Love. They made it work.
Yeah, I think it's conceivable. And again, because Steve mentioned the mistakes, at a certain point, it's not like, can Will Levis not make these mistakes?
Oh, my God.
It's just, when is it going to happen? And you have to think that if it doesn't happen here, where they're playing against a quarterback that they're very familiar with, perhaps, in Malik Willis, where the defense has been so good, if it still happens in this game, it's just an inevitability that he's going to give the ball to the other team in some hilarious sequence of events like the 2017 Jameis style, where it's just
that is a very good point. I mean,
he played pretty well last week. Other than that, play.
Right? But that's the thing about Will Levis. He plays pretty well, but if you don't protect the ball, it doesn't mean jack. I mean, so I think that's part of it. Also, real quick, to you saw Taylor Lewan on Malik Willis. That was a knock on Malik, and that's why he dropped until the third. So salute to Matt LaFleur for devising game plans and strategies to play to a guy's strengths.
And salute to him to developing
develop
as a pro, you know, and
1,000%.
and being, like you said, in a system that, look, it set him up because the run game was so creative. Like, that's what coaching is. Like, you take what you have and you take advantage. Jaden Reed is this chess piece that they're moving all around and is messing with the coverages. You could see Jacobs really getting up the middle on plays where they got distracted by what was happening with Reed. Meanwhile, Tucker Kraft is out there looking like Rob Gronkowski or something. It was pretty awesome. The Titans, though, they need this game. They're 0-2. They're going up against a defense that's been pretty blah in terms of their pass rush in the Packers. So we'll see.
Yeah, interesting side note, Calvin Ridley had those problems with press coverage last season. He's got 0 yards against press coverage this season. He's not seeing the ball when he's in press, and he's not necessarily getting open. So looking forward to that game, taking us to it's time for hot matchups presented by Wingstop. And you want a matchup that got a whole lot hotter than it was with 2 minutes to go in the game on Monday night. Kirk Cousins and the resurgent Atlanta Falcons playing host to Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, who were favored, Greg, by 3.5 points on Sunday Night Football with Mike Tirico and Chris Collinsworth and everybody at NBA.
Is it hotter? I mean, see, I'm a dark human, and if they were 0-2, I would be on like Michael Penix's watch, and so that would make it feel
you and a whole lot of other people.
It would just make it like all the bigger. And now they've sort of bought themselves some time. People would understand if they lose this game. I think the Falcons have a chance to win this game because I just think the Chiefs, they've just been okay so far. I know they've won the games, but I think you do got to look past that. Sometimes they are 18th right now in DVOA. That's total team efficiency. 22nd in defense, 12th in offense. Asking a lot out of Xavier Worthy. Now there's no Isaiah Pacheco. You're shorthanded there. Travis Kelce hasn't broken 40 yards on the season yet, like total. So that's just something to keep an eye. And they make up for it. They still have great players. They have Patrick Mahomes. They have great coaches, but they strike me as a little bit of one of those Patriots teams coming off the Super Bowl wins. That's like, yeah, they'll find their ways to wins, but sometimes it's a little bit on fumes, and it's just not all there yet.
You nailed it. I mean, when I saw the 3.5, I was like, that almost seems big. Not because I think the Falcons are just going to have an answer for everything, but right now they're just kind of getting by. I mean, when you knew the Ravens was going to be a tough game, you saw how challenging of a game that was, and the Ravens made some second half adjustments, but they're just kind of getting through it. Now the Falcons are feeling a little spicy. You know, you talk about this, sponsorship, this hot Wingstop spicy spot. They're feeling good about themselves because you saw what Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier did in that run game. That offensive line, the new OC, Zach Robinson, said, oh, this offensive line is designed to run the ball. Let's do that. Now, that's tough sledding when you're going up against Stone Cold Jones and Nick Bolton and some of the Drew Tranquil and guys like that for Kansas City. But they're going to stick with it. I mean, they're not going to put too much pressure on Kirk Cousins, especially with the way that the Chiefs can dial up some pressures. But I think this is going to be a competitive ball game. Again, maybe not so much because of what the Falcons do, but because the Chiefs are just kind of, we're here and there. One quick thing, though, the fact that not having Pacheco, that's a good point. The Falcons linebackers in that game against the Eagles did not play well. They did not
Week
play
one, they
well.
weren't good either.
They just did not look good. And if you can run the ball, if Kareem Hunt can come in and remember some of the plays, Kansas City can get that run game going. It is there for the taking unless all of a sudden they sink Simmons or Jesse Bates, who is out of this world in that game Monday night, can make a lot of plays.
Well, Jesse Bates is going to have to be out of this world in this game because I understand you're asking a lot of Worthy as well as maybe Juju Smith-Schuster. If Patrick Mahomes has the amount of time that Jalen Hurts had on Monday night.
Good point.
I sincerely don't care.
Great point.
Because I'm all on Lou Anarumo for rushing 3 on 4th and 16, and it's like if Mahomes has time, of course, like the game goes and the Chiefs are up and down every single year. But just watching like the sheer amount of time that Jalen Hurts could watch, the one time that he didn't have time was towards the end when he throws that pick looking for Devontae Smith because that's the only place he was going. I can't see. I need Atlanta, the number 32 pressure rate defense in the league. 32.
But Patrick,
whoa,
the Chiefs just benched their left tackle, right? This is not the Eagles' offensive line.
He'll probably be back in this week, but yes, it shows that they've got weaknesses.
Because Judon did play well. He's just got he's playing better. I mean, look, he played better. He wasn't some of the, but in terms of pressure, he was the one guy who can win.
32nd in pressure rate, though. That is probably Grady Jarrett's looked okay. Onyemata is on my radar because I've watched him closely his whole career, and he's another one of those guys I mentioned. Amari Cooper's kind of one of those guys. Either it's great or it's just not your year with Onyemata. Like, you think of him as a great player. In some years, he's great. And there were just a couple of those Saints years where it's like, where are you, man? And that's what it's been the first 2 weeks. I do think the Falcons have a chance. So they just have to you mentioned it. The offensive line just has to dominate.
Yeah,
if the offensive line mashes and protects, like, they got a shot. They got a shot.
Bijan goes for 212 or 2 scores. And he has a Texas line coming up.
He could. He's the best. I'm already ready to put him there. He's the best running back in the NFL. He's the guy I would want if I just had one. Right?
It's a reasonable proposition.
Saquon's right there. Probably 1-2 in that game. Probably 1-2 in that game. All right, we will take a quick break, and we're going to finish up the games just a little bit. Back on NFL Daily. No Survivor picks yet, but there might be one coming up.
You think so?
We'll see. I don't know. Well, we're getting to the end of this show here.
Okay, well, let's find out if this is the one, because the undefeated Mike Macdonald Seattle Seahawks are a 4.5-point favorite at home, as the Miami Dolphins will literally fly from the other side of the planet to take them on without Tua Tagovailoa. Skylar Thompson getting the start for the Miami Dolphins. So how do we feel about this?
First off, can I get an amen on the Survivor pick? This is me, guys.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Seahawks. That's my Survivor.
Okay.
I've been hot on them all right. What about you guys?
I mean, so, okay, a little peek behind the curtain. Let's just be real here. We'll take a break, and Steve tells the producers, Eric behind the glass, Hytham's there too. And you're taking your Survivor pick now. And I was like, oh, well, that was going to be my Survivor pick.
And I said, I was going to take Gino and company as well.
And we could be gutless and spread it out, or you could just believe in NFL Daily. Don't go down with the ship, because this is a lock. They're winning this game.
They're winning this game, and if they don't, then we're all suckers on here next week. But Skylar Thompson going coast to coast, playing in that stadium in front of the 12s?
Right.
It's not ideal.
No. When I look at this matchup, the offensive line of the Dolphins going up against the defensive line, I think that 4.5 is disrespectful.
I agree.
There's 5 or 6 more games here that have a bigger line, and I don't get it, because the Dolphins, to me, have not played well. Tua Tagovailoa was in that game when he got hurt. They were trailing 31-10. I was not impressed, and it's not because of Tua necessarily or their receivers, but the offensive line has really struggled. The defense has its share of issues, and the Seattle front, Patrick, they got something going here with the Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, Boye Mafe trio. That trio is going to create some issues this season.
And we saw it with vets in McDonald's last year in Baltimore, and it seems like those circumstances are reproducing themselves as this system continues to kind of snuff out opposing offenses. With some of that being the schedule a little bit, we're going to find out a little bit more going up against this Dolphins team. But are we, though? Like, I do think we can expect some growth from Thompson, because the last time we saw him was 2 years ago. He's a young guy as well, but it's hard to get out this idea of this Dolphins offense even struggling with Tua to where he's throwing balls to Robbie Chosen, who we love, but he runs the wrong route. There's another ball that goes.
He's no longer
in the NFL
right now.
Yeah, which is tough, because that's where he wanted to be. He spoke to us in the offseason as well. He came in studio, but it's not working right now. And now they're going up against a team that's on the come up, where everything's going right for Seattle thus far.
Right, and who's one of the fastest DBs, if not the fastest DB in the NFL? Tariq Woolen, right? Woolen, so he's a bigger guy. He might not be able to handle some of the shiftiness, but he's a guy with speed who can play. Devin Witherspoon can kind of help out in some of that shorter catch and yak stuff that they like to do with Jalen Waddle. So look, Raheem Mostert looks like he's coming back, right? That's going to help out HN in the run game. So we'll see. But when I look at a Seahawks team, to me, they showed a lot last week, because, Greg, we've talked about how good the Patriots defense is going to be this year. And the fact they had to go there and throw it 44 times to win a tough game against that defense on the road, cross country, and they did it. It goes to show me, we see the playmakers. We're looking at DK Metcalf on that big TD play against the Patriots. I just think that they're going to be able to put up some points. It could be a fairly tough game. Let's just give the Dolphins defense a little credit, but the 4.5 does seem like a small number for me.
And I know it's just 2 weeks, and that includes a quarter and a half without Tua, but Dolphins offense 27th this year overall in DVOA, 26th running the ball.
The O-line.
The O-line in the past, it was like, okay, they're banged up, and Teron Armstead's day-to-day. McDaniel actually said he's not overly concerned, which I'm surprised by. Like, I would always be overly concerned about Teron Armstead, especially when he just left the game. By the way, I just don't know why I'm thinking about this right now, but I wanted to say it. My son was at a Yakult Swallows baseball game in Tokyo.
I love it.
And on the loudspeaker, they were playing a Teron Armstead rap song from the Madden soundtrack. And I'm just saying, that's impressive. Teron Armstead has gone like international as a rapper. So like, he's a Walter Payton Man of the Year type of guy. He's a great player, and he's got his rap songs being played in Japan.
Oh man,
somehow Walker knew the song. He's like, yeah, I heard Teron Armstead's song.
That is
Tokyo.
a major coming up from Cahokia, Illinois, right outside of St. Louis. Well done.
He's worldwide.
Give him the ox.
Worldwide.
I completely forgot whatever point I was actually making. But yeah, their run game has been bad. Teron Armstead good, but their run game bad. They need it to be good.
And we'll see if they can overcome one of the big spreads of the week. The next biggest as we go to the Buffalo Bills playing host to the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Bills favored by 5 against a number 20 ranked passing efficiency offense, 17th rushing efficiency. They haven't been able to figure things out when they have, Steve. They've made crucial mistakes.
Yep.
What can the Jags do to win this?
This is a big number for me because I know the Bills have looked unbeatable. The Jags are desperate. I think the Jags come out and play a good game this game. If Trevor Lawrence can limit the giveaways. I mean, look at the numbers last week. What was he, 14 for 30? I mean, you talk about hit or miss. Now, he was playing against a very good Browns defense, but now this is where he's got to earn his money. And I think he's going to show up. I think they're going to have a good game plan. I don't know if they win this game, but that 5 looks like a big number for me. I do think they're going to be able to run the ball a little bit. You can't ask Trevor to put that ball up, 35 times a game. They're going to have to run the ball, but I think Jacksonville is going to give the Bills a very, very tough game here.
I look at Trevor, who's 31st in the NFL in completion percentage over expected. They were 1 of 4 in the red zone last year, and last week rather, which has been a problem. So suddenly you're having problems that are recurring. It's year 3 with Doug Peterson. There's some real frustration. Trevor Lawrence saying he sucks. Doug Peterson seemed pretty downcast after that game. You're not really used to that. They're 26th in the league in terms of quick pressure. So the offensive line's not playing well in multiple ways. I think they're 29th in something like contact before getting hit. Their running backs are actually playing well and having a lot of yards after carry. But so that's, again, it's another team where it's the line and it's going up against a reborn Bills line with Von Miller's playing well. Greg Russo's playing well. Ed Oliver played well in that game. So
Epinesa, yeah.
That's huge.
And it's this version of safety, Josh, that we've seen where he's not taking the big risk, mainly because the offense is structured differently. The volume of receivers out on the field just isn't the same, where he's taking deep shots down the field and putting the ball in dangerous situations. He's been very careful with the football. He's distributed the ball very well. He did have that one YOLO Josh run where he hurt his hand, but fortunately it got a week after the Dolphins really didn't have a lot to offer against the Bills on Thursday night. And then, Tua gets hurt as well. So not a lot of pressure to make him deal with that. And here comes a struggling Jags team where the Bills might just march on to 3-0.
Yeah, the one thing I do like about the Bills, and we all knew coming in because of what they did at wide receiver, they were going to be a tight end centric team and do some things with James Cook. They have done that plus.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have accentuated the 2 tight end look, and James Cook has been absolutely fantastic. Now, there's 2 games of film on that. All right, is Joe Brady going to continue to be, because he's always been known as a great play schemer. It was the play calling that was something he had to learn. Well, he looks like he's learned his butt off in terms of calling a great game. And I think this is going to be a good challenge for him because we do know the Jags D front. They've got some talent there, and they've got some linebackers who can run and not let James Cook get runs off like this. So, again, I think it's going to be a really, really good challenge. But, salute to Joe Brady and what those guys are doing up there with that 2 tight end look offense.
Yeah, and I don't think the Jags defense has been their issue. They've scored 30 points on offense through 2 weeks, I believe. And so, that's been the issue. And they are playing, though, a couple rookies or young players, rather, in the secondary. Jerrion Jones is a rookie, and then Buster Brown is a young player because they're without Darnell Savage. At least last week they were, who's their nickel back, and they're without their best cornerback, Tyson Campbell. So that worries me going against a pretty diverse passing attack with the Bills. I like this Bills team. They were my Super Bowl team.
They are good.
They can change their game plan week to week. I noticed that in the Miami game, like no blitzes and stuff. That's what you get with a veteran team, a veteran coach. Like they're a little ahead. People say, "Oh, it's the preseason. It's extended preseason." A team like the Bills, a veteran team, maybe are a little more ready.
5 points feels like a bit much. I would feel more comfortable in another spot where the Jags are 0-2, but they were in both of those games. So we're kind of fine.
This is the early Monday night game. We should point out.
Yes,
Chris Fowler,
early.
Orlovsky, and Riddick action. We're back to the double headers. How do you feel about the double headers, guys?
I love it. You don't like it, Patrick?
I support every decision made by the night. Here's and again, exceedingly diplomatic because again, I support and carry the shield and will stand in front of it and take whatever fire.
Yeah.
I like the afternoon slate on Sundays. It's where I work. We do game day live. I don't like losing a game from the afternoon on Sunday because sometimes we run into a situation where we get the Cowboys and the Saints. And people are out there looking for a game to watch.
Sure.
And the game might not be.
Where's Jags Bills? It's on Monday night early. The only issue I have is just why put them at the same time? Let's go back to back. You can deal with whatever little ratings hit you have for starting it at 5:30 or what. I don't care. You'll get plenty. It's an NFL game. Go back to back and have about 15 minutes in between for everyone to get a beverage.
But wait, I know you stand behind the shield. I'm going to step in front of it and want to take a big hit because you know how they're going to compute the numbers. Oh, the combined numbers for Monday night are going to be 78 million viewers on all platforms with these two games.
Right, because
and then that's
too many people miss the game because they're watching one or the other. Titans Dolphins last year was the perfect example. That was one of the most astounding football games I have ever seen. And most people didn't see it because they thought the game was over, and they're too busy watching Tommy Cutlets over there on ABC or whatever.
You're not a picture-in-picture guy?
I was downstairs, working for Channel 5. Shout out to the UK audience. But yes,
if I could get TV manufacturers to understand that we've been in 16:9 by over a decade now, we got to figure out a picture-in-picture that serves both parties. In the picture-in-picture, I'll hop off my soapbox, and we'll go to the return of the Lion himself, Andy Dalton, starting for the Carolina Panthers at the Las Vegas Raiders, who are favored by 5.5 points. Dave Canales was emphatic. He is not making quarterback change. He believes in Bryce. Yeah. Less than 24 hours later, Bryce Young going to the bench in favor of the veteran Andy Dalton and the Raiders, and Gardner Minshew coming off a big win in Baltimore over the Ravens. Greg, 5.5 points. Feel comfortable there?
No, Andy Dalton. I love you, man. I love that.
Same.
I love that you're courtside at the U.S. Open, just chilling the weekend before the season starts. I love that our great friend Chris Wessling came up with the Dalton scale 10 plus years ago now. That if you have a quarterback better than Andy Dalton, you have a franchise quarterback, and if you don't, then you need a franchise quarterback. And that is the Dalton scale. And here we are in 2024 in the studio named for Chris, and it's still true. He's still that guy. You need a solid starter, a veteran to come in and just be average, to be your version of Gardner Minshew. Andy Dalton will do that for you. As long as he stays healthy, I would take him over Gardner Minshew.
He would do that for you with those Bengals teams he played on. I feel bad for him playing.
He looked pretty good when he played for the Panthers last year. It was a shootout. One game, but it was a shootout.
Last year. Okay, last year. Right now, he's wishing he was Ryan Tannehill, who has publicly said a few times, I am only going to expose my body to the right situation. Ryan Tannehill, I'm sorry, the Red Rifle, Andy Dalton.
You don't think he wants to play a little football again?
Maybe, but behind these guys, look, I was at that Raiders-Ravens game. That Raiders defense is real. Patrick Graham has some real dudes, and he is coming up with some creative schemes. Getting an athletic D tackle like Christian Wilkins has allowed him to run a ton of games up front. Max Crosby not just winning coming off the edge. You saw him duck under. They were doing some great twists and stunts up there. And we have seen that the Carolina Panthers have, look at that, there's one right there. We've seen the Carolina Panthers have not been able to block anyone. Greg, you and me are going to combo for at least a half sack against that front.
I think I would struggle to get off my block, to get off the ground.
I mean, look, the Carolina Panthers are a hot mess. As much as we could blame it on Bryce, and he has not played well. He has earned not playing, but not everything he's been exposed to. Against this defense, that 5.5 number is small. I think the Raiders defense might get a score or two.
That's fair. David Clowney, you mentioned coming off an injury, did not have any impact in that game. No quarterback hits so far this season. J.C. Horn has showed up, made some big plays. The Raiders are a really weird offense, Patrick. They only have 2 first downs rushing on the season. They're averaging 2.5 yards per carry. That would obviously be the worst rushing team in the history of football. And yet Brock Bowers looks like, maybe already the best tight end in the league.
You can make the case.
Real deal.
And Gardner Minshew is in the top 3. I could not believe this. On intermediate and deep throws this year, he's in the top 3 in every metric. Now, he hasn't thrown that many, but when he's thrown them, they've been very effective.
A lot of them, and shout out to Josh Norris for pointing out the particular route that Brock Bowers is running a ton right now. He's dragging across the middle and then using that speed and versatility to come back out to the outside where nobody is. And so now you're in a bind where you're having to defend Brock Bowers literally 50 yards all across the field, as well as Devontae Adams behind that. I don't know when they figure out the run game in Zamir White and how that goes. I don't think winning the game is going to be a question here, because even which is apparently retconning the greatest start of all time by Andy Dalton 2 years ago in Seattle, where they lose the football game anyway, and he throws the ball 58 times for 361 yards. I just, all love to Andy Dalton. I'm not seeing it with this Carolina Panthers.
I feel so bad.
But maybe, the offensive genius of Dave Canales shows something to me and proves that why he's in this position in the first place.
Can you when they show this game, can you imagine the cutaways to Bryce Young on the sidelines? I mean, they're going to be living on those cutaways just to see him. Let's go.
I mean, look, he's their backup, and Andy Dalton has struggled. The difference between young Andy Dalton and older Andy Dalton that I've been able to tell is he just can't stay on the field lately. He's been getting hurt pretty quickly when he does play.
Number 98, Max Crosby, who's arguably playing better than anybody in the NFL, is coming Sunday.
Which is bananas, because he still doesn't come off the field.
No,
it was bananas a couple of years ago when we were talking about Max Crosby playing every single snap. He's still doing it, which is a certain. But what do you even say? He's at that point. What do you even say?
Who knows? I feel bad for Andy Dalton this week, man.
We'll see, Andy. Show us, Dave. Show us, Carolina Panthers. Let's go to the New York Giants, who had a tough, heartbreaking loss. Perhaps they figured out if they're going to have a kicker, and if they're going to have that kicker kick the football at the Cleveland Browns, who are favored by 6.5 points.
Wow.
Over-under
big number
is not a big number, 38.5. They're going to be enough points to get there, Greg?
Probably not. But the Giants defense is involved, and it passed my notice that they did not have a stop last Sunday. That the Washington Commanders, now they didn't score a touchdown, I get it, but they got the ball, and they scored every single time they got the ball. That does not happen too often. That is insane. They're not doing anything well. Like the big defensive line up front, they're not really doing much, and then they kind of play this soft zone where they allow a lot of short passes. Their run game in terms of their defense has not been good. Their defensive backs are getting put in position where they have to make tackles, and they're not making tackles. And I just think Stefanski will be good enough. And the run game will be good enough. You could see it against Jacksonville. When they were in that first 15 script, Deshaun Watson looked very comfortable. They knew what they were doing. They were all instinct. The rest of the game wasn't so great. He weirdly just doesn't look that athletic anymore, and his arms looks a little weird. But it was enough. He was much better in week 2. If they can get that version of Deshaun Watson, which is just good enough, they can score on the Giants.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't that a crazy game? I mean, they score 3 touchdowns. They don't get any PATs. And then Washington, because Jaden Daniels is getting every 3rd and 19 and running for first downs over and over, wins by getting, 8.
And sometimes they were just hitting like these like short passes and then running for it. Like, come on.
It's almost the game directly decided upstairs before the game. One team has a kicker problem. They go sign a kicker. He comes in that week and hits 7 field goals.
It's 7 field goals.
The other team makes a decision to have the punter kick extra points and field goals. He misses one, and then they punt on that plan, literally and figuratively, and it's just all over, and they lose the game because they can't do one or the other.
I do have something positive to say about the Giants.
Oh,
how about this?
Okay.
We have been talking on this around the NFL podcast and then now on NFL Daily that the Giants' offensive line has never once been good since I've like covered the NFL. Maybe I guess back, when Eli Manning was great, but I mean in the like the late Coughlin to now era, the offensive line has not been their issue the first 2 weeks. This will be a much tougher test, but by the metrics, by the eye test, actually they've been quite good through 2 weeks, and their offense was fine against Washington. Now it was a much tougher matchup. I don't know if the offense can continue to be, hey, ask on the sideline to Malik Neighbors, what plays do you like? That's what Brian Daboll was doing.
How good is he, though?
And then doing them. That'll work against Washington. I think you just need more. You need more than just that.
He's special.
And then over on the other side, right, because offensive line issues have been a problem for Cleveland as well, who have not had their starting tackles at any point.
Aren't they coming back, though? Haven't they been practicing?
And we'll see. But yeah, I think Jack Conklin is back. I'm going to have to check.
I think they're both back, but DeJuan Jones was not. So now we'll see. But I think they're hopeful maybe they might get their tackles back this week. Yeah, their original starters.
I think one thing, and it comes from another game on Monday night where I saw Eagles fans talking about Jalen losing a step before he had those big rushes. And the difference to me was the decisiveness on that.
Mm-hmm.
When Jalen was decisive, he put his foot in the ground and he was getting upfield. He was getting a lot of yardage. We haven't seen a decisive Deshaun Watson.
No.
Other than, like Greg, you mentioned those scripted plays. Things get in the second half and they get weird. He starts bouncing with the football.
Yeah.
Some of that's probably not having the tackles. Some of that is just him regressing as a football player. I think we'll learn something a little bit if they can get those tackles.
Real quick, do you think this is an opportunity? Him and Amari Cooper have not hit it off so far these first 2 games. Is this a game where they force feed him to get him going early? I think this is.
Yeah, you going up against Cordell Flott and
no Njoku.
Adoree Jackson, no Njoku. That this Giants team just isn't very talented. And then defensively, I think they've been left wanting. I think they were hoping to be better defensively, and so far they haven't been any better on defense.
Just don't ask Brian Daboll about his job security, Greg. He's going to stare you down.
Well, Malik Neighbors has job security.
Yes, he does.
If we want to be positive about the New York Giants, protect that man at all costs. Lest one day the biggest win of the week, like it was this week for the Giants, was celebrating somebody else dropping a football on Monday Night Football, where the entire Giants beat is talking about Saquon. Maybe they can get something to enjoy here at a little bit, Greg.
Maybe.
Next game, the Denver Broncos at MVP candidate, Greg, Baker Mayfield.
All right.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 6.5-point favorites at the Big Pirate ship down there in Tampa Bay. Greg, you scoff at the idea.
I do.
If they voted today, would Baker Mayfield not be the most valuable player in the National Football?
I don't know. I haven't thought that through. I'm not in favor of MVP talk before like week 7.
Oh, have fun with it.
It's all nebulous and vibes anyway,
Come on.
even in week 10.
I'm giving it to Kyler. How about that?
Okay.
Ooh, right. I thought it might be Kamara.
Josh Allen?
I thought it might be Kamara or Josh Allen.
Kamara would be fun. You're right, though. When Baker Mayfield is like the best runner on the team, things are going crazy. I guess I'll pose this question to you guys. Like, do you think Baker is just more athletic now, or is he just like on a heater? Because he actually is. The thing people would get on him for is like he would try to make plays in the pros that he would try to make in college, but it's like you can't do that in the pros. But the last 2 weeks, he kind of has been doing that in the pros.
Greg, sounds like you're insinuating he's on some special Gatorade.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, is he on a hot streak, or is he legitimately just better that now he can be like creator Baker?
Hey, look, man, he looks fantastic. His offensive line is playing well. I just think he's having fun and seeing the game better, right? He knows when to use whatever athleticism he has to his advantage, but I just think he's playing with supreme confidence. We know he is a talented player. right? He's a football player too. He's got that in him. He's got something to him, and the way his teammates respond to him, that's such a big part in playing that position. Those guys clearly like playing with him, and they believe in him. So knowing that your teammates have your back, it's got something. He's been playing fantastic. And this game for Tampa Bay, the 6.5 seems a little wide to me, even though they're at home, they're playing a Denver team. Poor Bo Nix. I mean, he's baptism by fire. All these defenses he's had to play, coming off of playing the Steelers, now coming into a game where Todd Bowles is going to show him 75 different looks. It's going to be a challenge, but I think this is going to be a tighter game than what we expect. When I see this over under at 40, I think that's probably about the perfect spot.
It's just a question of how many points do the Broncos offer into that equation, because we've talked now for 2 weeks, Greg, about the depth of target for Bo Nix. The weird NFL Pro stat that came up to me, he has the deepest drop back depth in the NFL right now. He's 9.1 yards behind the line of scrimmage. And so you take Bo Nix's difficulty getting the ball down the field and make the fact that he's actually even throwing the ball farther.
Does he have a negative plus minus?
It's
right. Well, and that puts your tackles in a bad spot.
Tackles hate it now.
Garrett Bowles is coming off of an injury and hasn't maybe been at his normal form. And they lost Mike McGlinchey. He is out, I believe, about a month, their right tackle. And yeah, you do wonder if Sean Payton just doesn't have it anymore, because the one thing you always knew about Sean Payton teams is they were going to block better than you expect. They were going to have a running game. That was always the secret sauce. And actually, the Broncos last year, I thought, did that. Like, you wouldn't have thought they would have been a good offensive line. They were. This couple weeks, they've looked a little broken, and maybe that's Nick's. But this is a tricky matchup because of the scheme. On the other hand, Kalijah Cansey's been out for the last couple of weeks. Vita Vea's out of practice.
Yep.
Wednesday, we've talked about Winfield. They're shorthanded in the secondary. So there are a lot of injuries for the Bucs, who are getting great play, by the way, by Zion McCollum. So that's good internal scouting. You trade away Carlton Davis. People were like, really? You're going to start Zion McCollum? And he's looked really good.
Well, again, and Todd Bowles, he gets off the bus blitzing. I mean, that whole expression. Bo Nix is going to see a lot of looks. Not something Sean Payton is unfamiliar with Bo Nix taking that deep drop. Maybe Drew Brees did it, but the one thing Drew Brees did was climb the pocket 6 yards. I mean, that might be something Bo Nix has to do, because Sean Payton would build his offensive lines guard, center, guard, instead of with the tackles, and that's something they've just got to get better at.
I want to continue this Baker talk at some point, because, it did start.
He's not on the island either,
It started to occur to me, though, is he is trending towards more of a Jared Goff type career than like a Jacoby Brissett type of career. And I'm
when I woke up
pretty
this morning, I was
surprised
feeling
about that.
pretty dangerous.
That's right. I mean, he got a nice contract, but he kind of got the Geno in between first contract. But if he's really Jared Goff and having that kind of career, like after this year or the next, like then he gets another big one.
$53 million a year.
We will see. Also, keep an eye on Patrick Surtain, who has traveled with the team's opposing best wide receiver in both games against Mike Evans. That's a fun matchup. This Broncos team has been blitzing like crazy, actually more than the Bucs, more than any team in the NFL. The Broncos have been blitzing. We will take one final break, and yes, we'll talk about the NFC champions from a few years ago and last year, and the AFC champions
as well
from a few years ago.
There we go.
Back on NFL Daily, starting with a NFC West game that was the NFC Championship a few years back. And we thought maybe it'd be a potential one this year. Meanwhile, on Wednesday's NFL Daily, Jordan Rodriguez of The Athletic, our friend, was saying, the real battle might be with the Cardinals and the Seahawks in this division. That's getting a little over our skis, I think, when it comes to the 49ers.
I don't know that it is, Greg.
Wow.
Everybody's getting hurt. This game is between two teams who are dealing with a litany of injuries. Yes, it is the San Francisco 49ers, who are a 7-point favorite at SoFi Stadium against the Los Angeles Rams. It's going to be a Fox game with Adam Amin and Mark Sanchez on the call. The Rams decimated by injuries. Steve, they could not stay on the field with the Arizona Cardinals last week. And over on the other side, this is a 49ers team that without Deebo Samuel takes a significant drop-off. Both these teams do.
A significant drop off. This is the Brandon Ayuk breakthrough game. right? Brandon Ayuk's been quiet the first 2 weeks. This is his game because the Rams defense is battered, right? We talk about injuries on both sides of the ball. They, in the secondary, they're banged up. They're not getting a ton of pass rush. I just think this is where Ayuk really gets his. Jordan Mason's going to continue to run the ball. I think the offense, yes, you're going to miss Debo Samuel. You can scheme up everything you want, but just this is personnel. And I think that's where, the 49ers offense is best. And then defensively for the 49ers, this is where they could eat. I mean, Matthew Stafford, he's going to be feeling it. Bosa, Floyd, and you talked about your MVP. We talked about Baker Mayfield. Fred Warner and Max Crosby, to me, have been playing better than any players in the NFL. I just can't see how the Rams are going to get to the end zone.
Right. It's hard to imagine Fred Warner improving because I think he's on a Hall of Fame trajectory, and yet he seems to be at another level. These last two games is as good as a linebacker can play. That's the thing with the 49ers. Like, yes, they're missing really important pieces that they probably can't get to where they want to go without having most of them back. On the other hand, they still have more talent than I would say 27 teams in the league with the talent that is remaining on both sides. Compare that to the Rams where, they're 28th in DVOA right now, 29th in defense, where the defense really hasn't been that injured. I know they lost John Johnson, their safety this week, but almost all the injuries has been on the offensive side of the football where they're just decimated and they're not good enough. They do get Alec Jackson back from suspension, who's their left tackle, but it's kind of an organizational gut check type of game because that was embarrassing a week ago. It's your home opener against your biggest rival. I tend to think that they're going to show up in this game and give it a great effort and a representative game where it's going to be a close game. These games, even when the Rams were really bad a couple years ago, early in the season when they were struggling, they showed up for these 49ers games and made them close, and then they would lose. But I have a feeling that will happen.
Yeah, the making it close and lose part plays into it. It's just very because I'm looking at last season with and without Cooper Kupp. Matthew Stafford's passer numbers, rating wise, dropped 23 points. You take Kupp off the field, that happens instantaneously. Now they have to do it with no Kupp and no Puka, with all the issues that they're facing up front on the offensive line. The defense is worse, other than some promising guys up front to believe in.
You say, by the way, Ayuk season. I say Juwan Jennings season.
Could be Juwan Jennings. Have a nice move the sticks. And we know this is also going to be a road game for the Rams, even though they're playing at SoFi. There will be 50,000 Niners fans in that stadium. They take over stadiums, and especially SoFi.
It's dark. It has potential to get dark fast, and it makes you wonder bigger questions about this Rams team.
Yeah, this is going to be real interesting when they get about.
We will see. We'll see.
In defense of, because I know people hear Steve's point, which is true. Didn't have football here in Los Angeles for a very long time. San Francisco was good for a very long time. There are a lot of Niners fans that don't have to travel. Right, they live down the street.
They'll
they
be
live
right
on
here.
Smallville. They just walk up to the game wearing a Niners jersey.
They're like, no, home team. Let's take the next closest team. Well, second next closest team because the Chargers from San Diego. Let's follow the 49ers, and that's what they've done.
Yeah, it was a rough spot for some fans for a long time. Speaking of fans who were in a rough spot for a very long time, the Washington Commanders. And the second
the roughest
Monday night football game coming up, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman will be on that game. Are 7.5-point dogs at the winless Cincinnati Bengals.
Talk about disrespect.
Who struggled early on in the season.
Come on.
What did Jaden and company have to do, Greg, to get some?
And yet, this will not be one of my 3 games that I pick. Man versus model, me versus Cynthia. That show is going to go up Friday afternoon. But if I had to choose this one, and this little preview for our show on NFL Network, game debut, I would take the Bengals still to win by like 10 because they need this so bad, and I do think they're that much better. That the one route that the Commanders have is that their backfield of Brian Robinson and Eckler have been one of my most pleasant surprises of the entire season. Cliff Kingsbury's always been able to scheme up a run game. I think that's his biggest strength in the NFL, and has gotten his offensive lines to play pretty cohesive at the NFL level, and they're playing well. But I'm giving more credit to the running backs because they're breaking tackles. They're making moves. I've never seen Brian Robinson play this well. He's been outstanding. And Eckler looks like 2022 Eckler. I'm not putting him back into
No, you're right.
2020, but I'm putting him back into 2022 when he was still a very effective player.
They're getting them in space, and that's one of the reasons they're going to break the first tackle, break or shake them, and that's one thing that they've been able to do. And Jaden Daniels, but he's going to be running, right? Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson are going to be putting some pressure.
I just talked myself out of it because the Bengals' run defense has been terrible, and they lost B.J. Hill and they lost who else? Sheldon Rankins up front.
Sheldon Rankins up front. That's a lot.
Maybe that's a recipe for a close game at least.
That's a lot on those linebackers. I mean, Pratt and Wilson are fantastic, hyper athletic, not the biggest guys, but they can run. But with those running backs and Jaden Daniels, we'll see if Cliff can go against his instincts and not throw it 35 times. But yeah, to me, that 7.5 number looks wide. I get it, but they are 0-2. There's some things going on in Cincinnati that aren't quite right.
Well, you guys mentioned it. The third most rushing yards between the tackles this season. And
Giving up.
Yeah. And here comes Brian Robinson Jr. Jaden's gotten rid of the ball very quickly this season in terms of time to throw. He's leading the entire NFL in time to throw. Now that's
because he only throws the ball 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage.
We got to get Terry. We got to get De'Ami Brown. We got to get them deeper down the field, get them into some routes, and keep Jaden safe because this Bengals defense is built to defend the pass.
Yep.
But if Jaden wants to go YOLO as he is want to do, I think 7.5 is too many points. I think the Commanders can move the ball and shorten the game because at a certain point, all love to Benjamin St. Juste and everybody in that secondary for Washington. If it doesn't work with Dan Quinn to the extent that it's not working now, I'm having difficulty picturing this group in the secondary like getting significant time in another spot. And they are not good right now.
Yeah, their corners, they're having a hard time figuring out what to do with their corners. They're not getting.
Might be the worst in the league. T. Higgins might be coming back, and that's the recipe, right?
Jamar Chase might not be getting unsportsmanlike type penalties for not getting the ball and things like that.
And look,
a big game.
I think the Bengals should have won that game in Kansas City, not just because of the penalty call, but just in terms of game flow and the drives. They looked like, it wasn't by a ton, but they looked like the better team to me in that game. And Joe Burrow, who had that rough week one, looked a lot better.
Yes.
Looked a lot more like Joe Burrow. So now you potentially get Higgins back, and you're looking at these cornerbacks that look like barbecue chicken, and I think it's coming. I mean, I think the big offensive day is coming for this Bengals team.
And also in defense of Jamar Chase,
yeah,
he can't see what's happening in that interaction with the tackle. He feels the defender grabbing towards the shoulder and the back and landing on his knee.
Oh yeah, that he was off on that.
He was calling for a horse tackle because in his body and his experience, he felt like that's what happened.
Patrick, he's like, son, are you trying to hurt me? I don't have my money yet. And that insurance company, that $50 million might take a couple months.
Exactly.
So do not put me on the sideline.
Just a little injury note before we go. The Cowboys listed CeeDee Lamb and Trevon Diggs as not practicing on Wednesday, so we'll monitor that throughout the week. But they both did finish last week's game, which is usually a good sign. Thanks for watching NFL Daily, presented by DoorDash. Just a treat for you guys to have you here in the studio. We will be here every single Thursday morning in your ears, previewing every game. And of course, we're going to be with you Thursday night. I got my old friend Dave Damashek. Hey, fella.
All right.
Joining me for Thursday night recap. Jets, Patriots. We're going to be live on YouTube. So come about 10 minutes after the game. We'll recap it. See you then.